So we are talking about a working parent's guide to well-being during this time in the midst of a pandemic. And well-being is such an interesting concept because oftentimes when I talk with parents, it's like, what does that mean right now, B? Like I feel like my frame of reference is completely different from where it would have been 10 months ago, where it would have been 8 months ago, or pre-kids, or pre-COVID. So we'll talk a little bit about that and kind of address what that means in today's context. I'd like to start by doing a little bit more of an introduction of myself. So as Sam mentioned, I'm Beatrice, but everyone calls me B, so please feel free to do that. I encourage you to do that. My pronouns are she and her. I am a life and executive coach with my own coaching practice through Beatrice Kim Coaching. I also serve as a group coach for the Stanford Graduate School of Business, working especially in their Women in Management program. I love that. And then I also co-founded a company called Awaken, where we provide diversity, equity, and inclusion workshops and education services for companies. All of that to say is that I love working with people like you, working parents, people who are juggling multiple things and trying to better understand what are your priorities? Who am I? Am I an employee first? Am I a partner first? Am I a mom or a dad or a caretaker first, right? These are all questions that I love working with clients with. I myself, I have 2 kids. Owen, who's 5, and I love that picture because you can kind of capture his essence there. He's very mischievous and rambunctious. And Stella, who's 2. And I'm just previewing for you by answering these questions myself that this is a question I'll be asking you in a little bit, which is one thing that brings me joy in these times, especially right now, is that every evening, my husband and I, Eric, we try to make a point of, okay, at least even for 30 minutes, because we both work in the evenings as well, for at least 30 minutes, an hour, tea and Netflix. And we've been watching Star Trek Next Generation. But that's just something that I really love and I look forward to every day. And then one thing I'm struggling with during this time, and I can't even follow my own rules because I put in 2 things instead of 1 thing, is I am struggling with boundaries. Right, boundaries between work and life. And there's that saying like working at home or working from home. And sometimes it feels like living at work, right? Those boundaries kind of really blurring together. And then meal planning. It's like, oh my goodness, we have to eat again, really? So those are some things that I am grateful for, that brings me joy, but also that I'm struggling with. And that picture of me is not really fair because it's over a year old, it's professional, it's me looking my best, my family looking my best. And what's probably more accurate is this in the midst of a pandemic, both of my kids perpetually in pajamas, except my son changes his top when he's doing Zoom classroom, and mom and dad looking a little bit more worse for the wear. So enough about me. This is where I'd love to hear from you. And again, if you want to put in the chat window and just making sure, reiterating what Sam said, making sure you're sending it to panelists and attendees. I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing that you're grateful for during this time, and or your choice, one thing you're struggling with during this time? I'd love to kind of hear what's coming up for folks. So don't be shy. And I know that there might be a lag too, but I definitely want to hear what people have to say. And I don't know. Yeah, great. Okay, it's coming in. Sorry, I think there was a lag. Beverly, I'm grateful that my husband cooks dinner every night. Ooh, Beverly, that sounds amazing. Jennifer, joy listening to music while we cook. Grateful for the extra time to exercise. Yeah, that sounds lovely. So thankful to have my little one at home for its first whole year. Yeah, there's that. I'm hearing that. Now it's coming in. I love it. It's going so fast I can barely keep up. Grateful for being able to work from home and help the kids with remote learning, for extra time with my family. So definitely I'm hearing there's a theme here around spending more time with family, spending time with my youngest. Grateful to get to hug my son more often and not having to commute. Yes, the commute time is gone, right? If you're working from home, if you're in a place that allows you to work from home. Struggling with domestic rebalancing of taking on more at home due to different work expectations, Yeah, absolutely. I'm hearing the boundaries of that. Grateful for comfy pants, Grace. Love it. Grateful for the extra time that I can have with my kids. Struggling with work and caring for an infant. Absolutely, having that juggling and having that blending in the same physical space is absolutely a struggle that's common with parents right now. Struggling with becoming more of a business partner with my husband because we're both working from home. Yeah, I'm struggling to get enough work time done during the day while I still have the energy. Yeah, the actual physical, emotional, mental energy is absolutely important to think about. Struggling with the time between work and home, missing my commute. Yeah, as a time to wind down. So I've heard both sides, right? I'm glad I don't have the commute. And then also, that was my me time and it's gone. It's been taken from me. Struggling, no time away or vacations to look forward to. Absolutely, that's a reality that many of us are facing. Struggling with when to end my day. Yeah, again, that boundary. Where is that? Because I feel like I'm living at work. Struggling to find balance because of time zone differences. Living in the East Coast, but working for a West Coast family, West Coast company. Struggling with mom guilt, even more so now than before. That constant back and forth tugging between kids' needs and work responsibilities. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Please feel free to keep these coming. It's not only helpful for me to see as the presenter, but also for others to see, for all of you to be able to share with each other, because the hope is that it's not just me learning and teaching, but for us to learn from each other and for me to learn from you as well. Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of the things that you all shared is absolutely resounding for me. And that's what we're talking about today, right? So here are some of the objectives is one, absolutely to build the awareness on the impacts to you as a parent during these stressful times. And that's one thing I really, really want to emphasize, and hopefully that we are able to capture in the description of the webinar today, is that we as parents have our own needs. And so the focus for today is not on your kids. It's not to address here are the things or here are the schedules or here are the hacks that we can do for your kids, but really here are the things that we can do for you and your unique needs and circumstances as a parent. So the focus will very much be on you, and there will be ripple effects and impacts on your kids as you focus on yourself. We'll discuss some practical tips based on a well-being framework that I'll introduce. And then in all the conversations that I have as a coach, both in the executive and life space, right? I don't want this to be some kind of theoretical exercise for us to kind of have this nice thought exercise and be like, great, that was a nice hour, and then done. I don't remember it again. But it's really about how do we translate the things that we're saying are important for us to say, I want to come back to prioritizing myself. I want to come back and regain some of that me time that I lost during commute, right? Some of the things that I'm hearing. I say that's important. So what do I want to do about it? How do I make that commitment? And I will be asking you what you plan to commit to apply what you learned here. Some quick community agreements, and this is just what do we want to do in this next 45 minutes together to really have this supportive environment with each other? What are we committing to each other, and what are we committing to ourselves? So I do want to ask, that we be present. We've got cute little babies on our laps and we have, kind of distractions, but for the next 45 minutes to really think about, this is for me. So I will ask you to be present and to resist multitasking. To actively participate, right? This is not me just talking at you. I really want right in the chat for you to start to have some paper and pen next to you. Really, what do you want to get out of this? What do you want to commit to yourself and make this as useful as possible for you? And then the last thing is, investing and committing to investing in your learning and also in your peers' learning, right? We're learning from each other just as you're sharing about, I'm not alone in this struggle, or, I'm not alone in feeling joy that I get to spend more time with my kids. So continuing to learn and invest in each other's learning as well. Sound good? Yes? So let's talk a little bit about context. what's happening in our world today. And this is not new because we're living it. But as we shape, like, our world has changed. It's not just in our heads. Our world has changed in the last 8 months. You're in the midst of a global pandemic. Depending where you are, and I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's natural disasters, there's fires. We've been in the midst of a lot of fire season. That's impacting our day to day. That's impacting whether we feel like we can go outside safely or not. Our inside home life, right? We're trying to work from home and juggling with kids being on our laps, being next to us, doing remote learning in the next room or in the same physical space. And also in this resurgence of this Black Lives Matter and this social consciousness that's arising that we've been seeing in media coverage, in our own personal development and journey of better understanding and coping and struggling with the racial inequities and racial injustices that have been unveiled in the past couple of months, maybe for the first time for many of us, or for our lifetime, but kind of having that kind of globally and collective experience that's having as our kind of context today. And how is that impacting our own personal worlds and spheres? And so with this global context, what we might be facing, if your home is anything like mine, and I know we're kind of the full gamut, but what you might be experiencing is you are now seeing yourself play the role of the parent, right? Something you're familiar with. But also now you are the teacher or the teacher's aide. You have now started also the full-time employee or part-time employee. You are the cook. You are the coach. You are the music teacher. Oh, and by the way, you're also your children's best friend or confidant or playmate, all collapsed into one, right? All of these things that used to be distributed now is kind of coming into light. And again, if you're anything like me, what's likely happening at the end of the day is you are done. It may not even be the end of the day, it's the middle of the day or at the beginning of the day, but you are completely exhausted and feeling depleted. And the word depleted is actually feels right, because 8 months later, we have depleted our surge capacity. And what surge capacity is in the vernacular here is that we have surge capacity that allows us to meet a moment of crisis, right? Something happens, all right, lockdown starts in March or wherever you are, what happens, and we kind of go dip into the resources that we have to meet that moment. But what happens is that we need to then be able to replenish that capacity. But 8 months later, we haven't had a chance to restore, to replenish, and we've completely depleted. And the outcome is that we go from 0 to 100 at the drop of a hat, right? Oh, I have unexplainable mood swings. What's happening here, right? That middle picture of Michelle Obama is that she talks about having this low-grade depression, just this like feeling of just everything dampening, kind of having that cloud overhang. And ultimately, who are we putting this out to? It's the ones that are around us. Us going from 0 to 100, for us to have these bursts of anger or this low-grade depression, it is impacting our families. It's impacting the people around us. It's impacting our colleagues and our coworkers, and we're all kind of collectively experiencing this. So ultimately, the impacts of this is that the feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, fear, and grief are absolutely common right now. And I really want to emphasize that. As you saw, as you and other folks in this webinar were putting into the chat, it is absolutely common. We are experiencing collectively all of these feelings because of a couple of things. The first is we are all grappling with this ambiguous loss. There wasn't this clear cutover moment where it's like, okay, this thing happened and now I know how to solve it. And that means that lacks a clear resolution. So we're all kind of trying to get a frame of reference or understand what we can hold on to. It feels ambiguous. And we're all going through grief. We are mourning this sense of normalcy, this sense of what's up and what's down and what's left and right. We're mourning that collectively. And as a reminder of what those 5 stages are for us to be able to name it, is that there's denial, right? Okay, well, this is going to end soon. There's anger. I can't believe we're still in the midst of this. If things were, addressed earlier on, or whatever the anger is. Bargaining, okay, if I wash my hands for 20 seconds and if I'm putting on my mask and we'll be safe. Depression, and then acceptance. And it's not linear. The stages are not linear. We may be bouncing back and forth, but to be able to name it and to even know, okay, this is what I'm experiencing, is also very empowering. Regression, you might notice this in younger children if they're going through, certain milestones and then they're regressing and they're feeling some of these impacts of the stress, or they're missing their friends. You might notice that. Changes in appetite, that's more apparent for us. And that can be either we're overeating, or kind of dealing with stress in that way, or undereating, lack of appetite. So it can be in both ways. Sleep issues, same thing, oversleeping or feeling like we need to be in bed all the time, or having trouble sleeping and clenching our jaws, or whatever the impacts might be, waking up in the middle of the night. Mood shifts, again, having the inexplicable, whoa, I don't feel like I have the reins in my emotions. I get so angry, or I get so sad, or I burst into these feelings that I can't seem to explain. And then that reassurance seeking, both as adults, right, wanting to know, okay, what can I control that makes me feel like I'm reassured. There are some things that I need. And also from our children that we're seeing, needing that validation, needing that they're not alone, needing to hear or feel safe. So I want to just pause here because I know I've been talking for a while, but what's coming up here? And you can feel free to put it in the chat, but are these landing for you? Are some of these things like, yes, that's definitely speaking to me, or, I haven't really felt this, or anything. I just love it. Yeah, Grace, every single thing, period. There's something really empowering, especially in coaching, to know that we're not alone, that we are not alone in these feelings, and in understanding what the impacts are of these feelings. So appreciate that input, Grace. So what can we do about it, right? What can we do about this? Yeah, and I see more input. Awesome, thank you. Keep them coming, because we're learning from each other as well. You've heard the concept of depleted surge capacity, yeah, and it resonates so strongly with me. The loss is strange. I feel lost, but can't pinpoint it. Absolutely. The difficulty is getting people to reach out to others when they don't know what to do. Yeah. There is that feeling of, well, there's one thing to just name it, to know that I'm feeling lost, to know that I'm feeling like I don't have the reins on my own emotions, but I don't know what to do about it. Yeah. So that's a great kind of segue into what are some things that we can do about this? What are some ways that we can shift? And the introduction here is around these 5 pillars of well-being. So we're going to address this, and the framework here is around emotional well-being, physical well-being, occupational or your workplace well-being, social, and then environmental or community well-being. And here's the thing that I'm going to ask of you. What I'm going to ask of you is that, again, this feels very engaging. This feels like I'm not just talking to you and it goes into one ear and that was great, and then it goes out the other. But really, how do I want to do this? So if you don't have already, please, I encourage you to have a pen and paper with you, or your journal, or your note-taking space, or maybe it's another screen, whatever is necessary, because I will be asking you, what do you want to do about this? Okay. Before I go into the first pillar, a quick note on resistance. And that logo from Star Wars is just a shout out to my son, who is obsessed with Star Wars. The resistance, join the resistance. But in this case, I want to just name it, which is, it is very common for us as human beings to feel resistance, when we're about to come to change, right? Because we don't like change in general as human beings. So my ask of you is this. My ask of you is that when you feel that, if and when you feel that today, to just to acknowledge it, but then also to replace, I don't have time for X, B. I don't have time for exercise, B. I know these things, but I don't have time for that. I have 1,001 things to do. To then shift it with X is not a priority for me right now. And just see what it does for you, right? You see that shift where the agency then comes from you. It's a choice that you get to make versus something is happening at me, or the knee-jerk reaction to say, I don't have time for that. And what might happen is that then you really think about it. You're like, yeah, actually, exercise is absolutely not a priority for me right now. Sleep is, being a good mom, parent is, and that means having all my time devoted to my kids or whatever. Work is more of a priority. All of these things might come true. Or what might actually happen is, it really is a priority. What does that mean? What does that mean that needs to be shifted? Or do I have the wherewithal? Do I want to do something about it? So let's jump into emotional well-being tips. And I'm already going to preview for you. The first three are the most hardest, but they are also the most impactful. And I'm going to start with hard and then get a little bit easier. But the first one is to be more mindful and intentional about giving yourself permission to focus on you. And the reason why I lead with this, hardest concept of all, is because it's the biggest piece of resistance that I get from parents time and time again. Well, what does permission to me even mean? I've got 100 things on my list. I'll put myself at the bottom of the list, but then we never get to the bottom of the list. And so we are constantly depleting our capacity because we don't spend the time or give ourselves permission to actually replenish our own capacities. And then we become hollow. And what then that happens is that what is the impact to our kids if we don't do this? Is that we do go from 0 to 100. We do kind of then have those bursts. We do then get, our fuse is short, whatever that impact is. And so it's really understanding it's that shift of what does that mean for me? What does it mean for me to give myself permission? It might actually be like, okay, I do want to have untouchable time, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning. How do I make that work? Is this a priority for me? Maybe if I have a partner in my life, or if I don't, but having a conversation to say, on Wednesdays, you know what, from 6 to 7 p.m., you lead dinner, or I need help. I'm going to ask a neighbor, or whatever. I'm just going to get out of the house for an hour. I don't need to have a plan. I don't need to say it's before these reasons, but I just want to get out of the house for 1 hour, be in the car for an hour, watch your favorite show for an hour, whatever, right? But it is that shift and that permission giving. And one of the things that I love from Dr. Daniel Siegel, who is a child psychologist and the author of The Whole Brain Child, he says, the very best thing you can do for your children is to work on yourself, right? To know that we need to fill our cups so that we can refill others. So I told you this is the hardest one, but it is also truly the most impactful, is to have that shift and to carve out and intentionally say, what does giving myself permission actually mean for me? Whether it's even 5 minutes, or it can be an hour, or even whatever that looks like, but to make sure that that is something you do for yourself. Yes, permission from the guilt when you do take the time too, absolutely. To know that the guilt might be there, but to acknowledge and ground yourself, right? And saying, actually, if it will help my kids, it will help my kids. Taking time away from my kids might actually ultimately help my kids. Learning to say no or yes to help. So again, I'm going to start with 3 hardest ones and I'll get easier, I promise. But being brutally honest on why you're saying no or yes to something. Is it a gut reaction to say no when someone offers help because they don't actually mean it. They're not actually offering help. Or say, is it a gut reaction to say yes to something, even you feel completely overwhelmed because you're concerned that it makes you look bad, that people think that you're not going to be as valuable of a team player, or that you're not going to be as good of a parent. What is the actual reasons of why you're saying no or yes to? Oftentimes when I work with executives too, it's like, okay, you've got 10 things on your plate. What are the 5 things that you can delegate, right? What are the 2 things that you're going to absolutely say no to? And just being able to truly be able to understand why you're saying no or yes to something, and then being able to actually follow through. And then this last third difficult one, but it is all around shift, is to be able to speak to yourself like you would want your children to speak to themselves. Because again, that is probably the most impactful thing we can do for our emotional well-being, is when we catch ourselves being so cruel to who we are. And yet when I ask parents, if your kids were speaking to themselves in that way, would you be okay with that? And the answer 1,000% times is always no, absolutely not. It would break my heart to know if my kids spoke to themselves the way that I speak to myself. And so again, it's this internal shift. It's being able to write down, okay, as you're jotting down what's important for you, how do I become more aware of that? Or what does that mean for me? And being able to just even shut that down, or to say, I'm being exceptionally cruel to myself. Well, how would I speak to my child at this moment? So here's one that is less difficult, but it is something that will help with the emotional well-being, which is meditating in increments. And I say this because often as parents, I'm not, I'm a parent too. I'm not going to say, okay, let's dedicate 60 minutes in the morning, every morning, to do meditation. And yet we know that there is countless research that backs up the importance of mindfulness and the physiological, physical, and mental benefits that meditation can have. And oftentimes we say, oh my gosh, it has to be this big time suck, this big thing. And the reality is that it can be as much as 3 breaths, especially if you hold anxiety. And I do this with my own kids. So you can also practice with your young children, with your older children and teenagers. What does meditation in increments look like? So the first one is just having 3 breaths. And the key here is not even in the breath, but in the full exhale, because we are sending a signal. Our parasympathetic nervous system then says, when I can fully exhale, I'm out of danger. I'm out of that fight or flight mode. And I can now, focus on being more relaxed. I can focus on digestion. I can use the restroom or whatever. And so I want to do that with you right now. Do that with me right now, which is, let's do a full exhale. And see what comes up here. Was there a shift? It's like, what do you notice? What I notice is that I'm talking a little bit fast. I feel like I want to slow down a bit. That I was holding a little tension right here. Less tension in the back. Yeah. That was 2 seconds. But to be able to bring yourself back to the body. Another really quick way to kind of bring yourself back, teaching your kids to bring themselves back to, teaching your partner, your support system to bring yourself back, is 3 senses, right? What are 5 things that I physically see? What are 5 things that I physically hear? What are 5 things I physically feel? The hearing one always gets me. I can hear my own breathing. I can hear my child giggling downstairs, right? But it brings you back, and it stops you from that feeling of fight or flight. And then the last one is around practicing gratitude. Again, there's a lot of body of research around the Happiness Project or around gratitude and what that can do for our emotional well-being. And I know Oprah Winfrey, like she even says, like, okay, your gratitude journal, or you might even have one. But 3 things that went well today and why they went well. So our usual go-to is, okay, I'm thankful for my family, I'm thankful for my health, I'm thankful for the roof over my head, and it becomes rote and no longer has meaning. But really to be able to reflect on what are things that went well today and why did they go well? You know, what went well today is that my son actually started the day by reading a book. Hasn't happened. And you know why it went well is he is actually a really good kid. I don't think I give him enough credit. And he's really curious. And it also went well because I want to give, you know, some credit to his teacher and to me, and that we've been able to create that environment for him. Right? So you see that it's this virtuous cycle. And when you can not only name something, but also the answer to why. So here's where I want to hear from you. What's one thing you want to do? Either something that I just shared that is like, yeah, I want to take away, I want to be more intentional about it. Or if it sparked something that's like maybe adjacent to it, that's like, oh, here's something I want to try. Or what's one thing you're already doing that you now want to do with intention, that you now want to recommit to doing and doing that with intention? I'd love to hear from you, and put that in the chat box. What's one thing that you want to do from this, or one thing that you want to do now that you're already doing, but with intention? What are people having to say? Breathing. Yeah, taking breaks to breathe throughout the day. Maybe setting up some systems to remind you of that breath work. I want to recommit to breathing with intention, those long breaths. Alicia, yeah, daily gratitude, Beverly. Meditating in increments, being intentional about self-care, Aisha. Giving myself permission to take time for me, permission to focus on myself. Absolutely, Sulang. Take a moment to go outside and to breathe and stretch. Give myself a me day away from the kids and not feeling bad about it. Absolutely, Leanne. Being comfortable with the grandparents to take care of the children. Celebrating the day's wins. Love that. Yeah. Gratitude, not taking a moment for meditation because I was feeling like it was just another thing to add to my day. Now I know I can easily build it into my day. Yes, Tiara, yes. This is about those incremental commitments to yourself. I require kids to join us for dance parties in the kitchen after dinner, even if it's just one song. Oh, Karen, I love that. Absolutely. I love that. Listening to my body. I love exercise, but I want to do the exercise that meets my body where it is on that day. Yes. Going for a walk at lunch, breathing, meditation, singing practice and lessons. Leah, absolutely. I love that. I love these ideas. And and not only is it ideas, but again, in your own commitment, what are the things that you want to commit to doing to give yourself permission to? Absolutely. Keep them coming. They're good ideas for other people to take away as well. And if you don't have an idea for yourself, feel free to take someone else's idea that they share. Physical well-being tips. This is where I'm going to caveat here. I am likely not going to share something that is mind-blowing that you have never heard before in your life. But again, this is about those incremental commitments and changes. What are you committing to? What is important for you to make sure that you're actually now aligning yourself to the intentions that you're saying are important for you, right? It's less about education. Doctors know that smoking is bad for you, but you see doctors taking smoke breaks, right? So it's less about the actual knowledge gathering, and it's more about what are the intentions and the commitments you are making for yourself on the things that you say are important for me. So the very first one is talk to your doctor or medical professional. Are you putting off anything that has been bothering you? And commit to taking 2 minutes after this webinar to make that video appointment, to make that health appointment, to, you know what, I've been meaning to ask my doctor about my sleep issues. Yeah, I got to reach out. I want to do that, right? It is just that reinvestment. Yes, Grace, investing in my health and purchasing and asking my desk support, right? Doing these things that you know you've been saying and you've been meaning to for a while, but then actually carving out and doing it. Nutrition, right? Is there something that you can just remove one item or add one item or replace one item? I got a crazy sweet tooth. Right 9:30, that Netflix and tea time with Eric. I want to eat all the sweet things in the world. I've replacing that with fruit. But again, it's not about I want to go from 0 to 100 in one movement. It's making those incremental shifts so that at the end of the week, I have 7 more servings of fruit that I normally wouldn't have had. I've had 7 less servings of donuts that I would normally have had without that incremental commitment to myself. Less coffee, Karen, yes. Exercise, every move counts. Again, we have this notion in our minds that exercise needs to be 60 minutes or 30 minutes of full-on cardio, strength training. It has to be this. NPR's Life Kit has a wonderful podcast around exercise and making it exercise stick, but it's the notion that every move counts. It doesn't have to be what we've narrated needs to be, this 30 minutes or 60 minutes block. Let go of that all or nothing notion. Is it even just doing 5 jumping jacks every time you have to go to the bathroom? You know, you go to the bathroom a number set of times, anchoring that and doing 3 jumping jacks. At the end of the day, you've got 24 more jumping jacks than you would have had. You've got, you know, it compounds upon each other, right? It's these incremental. Sleep. This one, again, I want you to check your gut resistance, and especially for those newborns that you have out there. I know that this feels like such a far off concept, but it's this idea that sleep deprivation presents itself very similarly to depression. So absolutely talk to your medical professional. I am not a doctor, but are you truthfully practicing good sleep hygiene? Like truly, is this something that you know is important for you, but again, you've been putting off, or yeah, I know that no screen time, I know these things. But really, again, is this a commitment you want to make for yourself? And again, speaking to a medical professional, but making sure if this is critical, if this is something that's been not a part of your life, whether it's a sleep aid, whether it's a bridge to have so that you can continue to support yourself and refill your cup. But what are the things that you want to commit to incrementally to make progress towards the intentions that are important for you? So you know the drill at this point. I want to hear from you. What's coming up for you? What's one thing that either I just shared with you or that it sparked a new idea that you want to commit to, that you have intention to, that you want just one thing, one movement in your life? Or again, what's one thing that you're already doing that you will now do with intention, that you will now again acknowledge is important for you, that you want to reinvigorate for yourself? Karen, to not bring the phone into the bedroom. Absolutely. Yes. Life is a grand experiment. Trying that out for the next 7 days, seeing what kind of movement, seeing what kind of improvement that does for your sleep. Eating more fruit instead of chocolate. Beverly, you are one right after my heart. Absolutely. Trying that out, seeing again how these compound upon each other and add to your physical well-being. Going to sleep, working out every day. That's amazing. Incremental changes count. Yes, Tiara, giving yourself that permission that incremental changes count. Stretching. Oh, absolutely. My body holds a lot of stress and stuck in a chair. So again, what are the systems that you want to put in place to support that intention, right? It's not enough to just say, I want to stretch more, but again, how do you make that happen? Is it an alarm clock? Is it a reminder to stretch? Absolutely. Slowly sipping lemon water. Great mindful way to introduce energy in the AM. Absolutely. Love that. Keep these coming. Again, we want to continue to take people. I'm stealing some of these ideas. I love it. Lemon water in the morning. But so that we can learn from each other as well. Workplace well-being, and I'm mindful of time, so I'm kind of zipping along here, but I do want you to encourage to continue contributing to the chat, but also most importantly is putting these commitments for yourself. Workplace well-being tips. I want to start this off by fully acknowledging there are things that are out of our control. And then there are things that are within our control. Some of the things there may be companies that we work with where there are regulations, there may be governmental regulations and policies, there may be natural occurrences, there may be, we can't control our manager's disposition, right? There are things that we cannot control. So I want to acknowledge that, absolutely, and then also acknowledge what are the things within our control. So the first one is around boundaries. And really understanding there's this concept of Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law is the idea that work will expand to the amount of time you give it. And yes, absolutely. There's a lot of work to get done. I'm not discounting that. But truly understanding what are the boundaries I want to place in my life between work and life? What are the things that I need to do that I want to commit to myself to blur and limit between each? Likely, if you start thinking about what are the boundaries, then there's probably some conversations that will need to be had as well. And with whom? If I have the boundary and limit and intention, you know what? Every night from 5 to 8 p.m., I don't want to read email. I want to really have that sacred time, and only if it's super urgent and the building is burning down, that those are the times that can be reached. If that's an example of a boundary, what will support you in making sure that those boundaries are kept? Likely you're going to have a conversation with your manager, conversation with your team, conversation with your partner if you have one, or your support systems that allow you to be able to do that. So what are the boundaries you want to place? Also, these are not just but you can have physical boundaries too, whether it's a physical room, right? So that those lives are not bleeding in within each other, or it's I don't have a physical space. People with young children who you might have a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, or, I know there's the newborns who can't read or be able to do that, but a sign that says, red, yellow, green. Red, don't talk to mom. I'm in a call, even though I'm physically in the same room as you. Red means stop. Yellow means I'm working, but okay, if it's urgent, you can talk to me. Green is okay, office door policy. But being able to put some of those actual physical boundaries too can be important. And again, this is if you have a partner, or what are the support systems that are allowing you, whether it's childcare, whether it's a family member, person you pay, or caretakers. But again, redesigning those expectations with your colleagues, teams. Are you on the same page about everyone's needs? Are you making your own needs be heard? Are you building resentment because you haven't actually communicated what's important for you, but you haven't actually said it, but now it's just kind of growing and growing? What are the things that need to be redesigned with this new way of life for you to understand and make things accommodating? And if it's not, better understanding, okay, what's the immovable? And truly, what are the movable? What's out of control? And truly, what are the things that are in control for you? And here I'm just reading what you were saying, the concept of the fake commute. Right, yeah, where after work you walk around the block. Absolutely, get that commute time back, allowing yourself to shift to family from work and work to family. I love that. I love that idea. And then again, that's a perfect example of setting expectations with others, right? And if you have not yet already, if you have a partner, to say, what is the relative priority of your careers? Maybe it might be 100 to 0. Like, my career is always going to take precedence because I am a front-of-the-line health worker, or because, whatever the things are, I'm the breadwinner, and there's maybe some clear lines, or maybe is it 50-50, but being able to have those transparency and having that conversation. And this is not a one and done, by the way, conversation, right? This is not okay, I had it back in March and now I'm good. These are things where it's constantly changing. Are you revisiting these topics? Are you having the clear communications necessary so that you understand what those expectations are with your support systems in place? Use your kids as buffer, Grace. Yeah. Being able to use that as a positive constraint in setting those boundaries between work and professional, work and life, personal. So what's one thing that you want to do? Or one thing that it sparked? And again, one thing you're already doing maybe, but that now you want to do with intention. And I'm hearing, for me, Tiara, I love the idea of that fake commute, resetting my mind, but also it's actually a communication to my family. Okay, when I come back and come to that door, it's not me coming back from work, it's me now going into work. So that could be a boundary there and a communication. Absolutely. Put toddler time, so actually scheduling in toddler time, Grace. Karen, will you send out the slides? I'll work with Sam and the home team to see what's available and make sure that you're not scrambling for all the notes here. Creating an end of the day ritual. Yeah, that creates ability for me to be present with my family. Yeah, having some supportive rituals at the beginning of the day and also at the end of the day to kind of be that end cap and beginning cap to the day can be a physical, but also a mental boundary and reminder for yourself. Absolutely. Prioritizing my to-do list for what are the top 3 things to get done today. Yes, since it feels like my list is never completed, right? What are those 3 big things? What are the things that I want to ship, or what are the things that I want to make sure? What's the one big thing that I have that goal? And when I do it, to let it go, let the rest go. This last one is the last one in for a reason, and it's the last one because in our Maslow's needs of hierarchy, right? I just went through what are the things that are important for us in our own kind of world that we live in to make sure that those are the things that need to get addressed. But this last one is we are social human beings. We are a part of the community. There's something here that naturally we are drawn to that can have a huge impact on our mental and emotional well-being as well. And so let's talk about what that can look like. And this first stage about social, right? So often Zoom fatigue is real. Like, oh, I've been staring at the Zoom all day. I'm in meetings all day. So it's less about having to be with grandma and grandpa or having to be with friends in a social capacity where I'm just staring at you, because again, that is very fatiguing. But keeping those low-level exchanges are absolutely important. So what would you do if you were having meals or games or walks or even watching a show together? You're not staring at someone constantly. It's just to have them on, to continue to eat, but then to be like, oh, I just saw something, or what's really funny, but you don't have to constantly be staring at someone across the screen. And that can do a huge impact on your emotional and social well-being. If you have a romantic partner, I know this isn't the case for everyone, but if you do, or if you, again, with yourself and or your support or deepening of friendships and relationships, continue to start having those date nights, even if it's like after the baby goes to bed, or even if it's, even for 30 minutes of like, what are those essences of those things that you miss? What are the things that I miss my favorite restaurant? Well, is it the ambience of it? Is it the actual food of it? Well, I actually miss that we got to have some uninterrupted deep conversations. How can that be replicated? What is there that allows for that replication? Again, whether it's with a romantic partner, whether it's with the friendship that you miss, that you just want to kind of rekindle or reconnect with. But that can do, again, in supporting of ourselves, to know that we're not isolated, and that we're not alone, and to scratch that itch that we have as social human beings. And then the last one is that of contributing to the larger community. There's a whole body of research that shows that offering support actually can do equally, if not even more, benefits psychologically, emotionally, to the person who offers the support as well as to the person who receives the support, whether it's for your neighborhood at the emotional or tactical level, bundling grocery orders or creating cards or hiding. Like my kids and I just recently created these little cards and hid it in people's mailboxes, being more active in our communities that we're part of, whether it's a church community or school communities, feeling like we're contributing to our local restaurants. There's something there that again reminds us that we are a part of a larger community, a larger connective being that again helps us to reground, and it contributes to our well-being. So I'm absolutely recognizing that we're running out of time. And so this is the last ask here, which is, I want to hear from you, right? Is there something in this that sparked for you? Oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to be more mindful of that. I want to recreate some of those low level exchanges, or I want to have that conversation that I have been meaning to have with a good old friend, or reconnect or rekindle some of the things with my romantic partner. What does that look like? What's that allowance for? What's that permissioning look like for me to be able to do that? Let's hear from you in the chat. I think this is an older one of prioritizing my to-do list. Yeah, Karen, date nights. Yeah, we struggle to take the time for each other. But again, it's maybe it's a different view. Maybe it's a different take on what date night can look like now in this context. Aisha, reconnecting with girlfriends. You miss that, to be able to understand, or be even a text message. I haven't talked to you in a while. What's going on in your life, right? I feel isolated. I miss our connection. What else? What else is coming up for people here? Well, as they're coming in, I know we've got about 1 minute. So these are kind of like the things that we discussed. But I want to hear from you. What is your biggest takeaway from today's session? What is the biggest takeaway, or the biggest commitment that's here that you want to kind of have as either a witness for other people to witness, or for you to just say and declare that you want to do? What's your biggest takeaway?
And Beatrice, as we wait for some of those to go in, would you mind if I screen share? I just want to make sure that
Yes, absolutely.
folks need to jump. I just get you
Yes,
that special
thank you.
offer. Thank you so much for such a really interesting and thoughtful, with so many tangible strategies. We really, really appreciate you coming on today in such an active chat. For everyone who's with us, I just want to share, just for being here today, just a special offer from home. So as part of our mission, we are offering access to 15 plus classes over the next month, including nonviolent communication, something that I know has been adopted, and we'll talk about this in a class, to do with children as well. So something that's very tangible, weaving through turbulent times and embracing diversity with inclusion. And so a real diversity of class offerings. These are only 3, but 15 plus other ones that are happening over the next month. If you'd like to join us, special promo code PARENT, all caps. You can go to honehq.com today, use that promo code, and you have free access all month to Hone's catalog. So just want to get that to all of you before we jumped off today. And